This battle report may contain content that isn't suitable for younger audiences and that some people may find distressing, such as descriptions of violence, particularly gruesome descriptions of death, or spooky skeletons. If you think there's a chance it may contain something you would find unpleasant, please check the description below for a quick list of everything in the video. South of the Empire, beyond the Border Princes, sits the Badlands, a desolate region of barren rock and arid plains. It is home to a sizable greenskin population, second only to the Darklands in the east. These greenskins form into tribes, each waging war against the others in an eternal power struggle without any prize at the end. One such tribe was Kizhud's Boys, led by the Black Orc war boss, Kizhud. The tribe made camp under Kizhud Ridge, a sign of the war boss's intense creativity. Under his guidance, the tribe waged war against the Greenbiters tribe. They took to the field, where Kizhud put his cunning scheme into play. While the Greenbiters arrayed themselves in a long line and charged into the fight, Kizhud held some of his forces in reserve. While the spear chuckers rained bolts into the center of the formation, the two flanks countercharged, slamming into the bulk of the Greenbiters tribe. The Greenbiters rushed into the open section, turning to wrap around the exposed sides of the flank. Just as the flanks threatened to buckle, Kizhud's center charged. This turned the tides of the fight, and soon the Greenbiters tribe was sent fleeing. It was only after the fight that the commanders of the flank, Crogzic and Batoc, discovered Kizhud had not, in fact, been executing a cunning plan. He was simply dead. A stray bolt had taken his head off in the opening volley, and the center had been in disarray until the orcish instinct to get stuck in kicked in, and they charged. With the death of Kizhud, the question became who would take command of Kizhud's Boys. After much sophisticated debate, mostly taking the form of fistfights and shouting matches, Crogzic and Batoc emerged as the only two remaining candidates. The two engaged in civilized discussion to determine who would be in charge, but neither was willing to flinch when the other bellowed in their face, and no amount of punching could convince the other to step down. Finally, Crogzic had an idea. As the sun began to set, he suggested that they have a final fight to determine who would be the winner. They would meet up the next day on Kizhud Ridge, and brawl it out until one was the clear victor. Batoc agreed to these terms, and the two parted ways to prepare for their duel. Unfortunately for Batoc, Crogzic was brutally cunning. He had no intention of fighting it out. Instead, he grabbed the boys, goblins, and even some black orcs who were loyal to him, and made plans to head up to the ridge with all of them the next day. When Batoc arrived, they'd jump him, kill him, and claimed Crogzic had beaten him in a fair fight. Little did Crogzic know that the savage orc Batoc was cunningly brutal. That night, he called the savage boys and goblins who listened to him, and made plans to bring them with him to Kizhud Ridge. When the two orcs arrived and found the other had tried to cheat by bringing a small army with them, they were outraged. How dare the other orc try and cheat them? Did they think they were a fool who wouldn't notice? Well, they'd show them. Crogzic and Batoc both screamed battle cries at their opponents. The battle on Kizhud Ridge had begun. Today's game is a 500-point game of Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition Warbands, played between two forces of orcs and goblins. To help differentiate them, they'll be referred to as Crogzic's Boys and Batoc's Boys. They roll for first turn, and Batoc wins the roll by 1. Batoc's Boys are led into battle by Batoc. He is a savage orc Big Boss, equipped with a shield and wearing Warpaint. Joining him is the Goblin Shaman Stinkam. Stinkam rolls for spells and gets the Hand of Gork, which he opts to keep. He is accompanied by a unit of 15 goblins. Batoc, meanwhile, joins a unit of 5 savage orc boys with shields and Warpaint. They are joined on his southern flank by 10 more savage orcs with shields, while the north flank has a unit of 5 savage orc boar boys with Warpaint positioned behind 10 goblin wolf riders with bows. Standing opposite them, at the head of the force is Crogzic, an Orc Big Boss with the Ironskin Shield and light armor. He is joined by a unit of 12 Orc Boys with shields and full command, as well as a unit of 10 Black Orcs with shields, a boss, and a standard bearer. Deployed between them is a Goblin Spear Chukka, while on the north flank is a unit of 20 goblins with spears and light armor, and 2 units of 5 goblins with bows. The game begins with Batoc's Wolf Riders wheeling and advancing, before using their free reform to reposition themselves and make room for the Boar Boys. It's not quite enough, and they have to wheel around them a little, rendering them unable to get out as they'd like. Beside them, Stinkam is about to try and cast Hand of Gork, but a squabble breaks out among his ranks, and he's too jostled around by his fellow goblins to focus on casting. On the southern side, Batoc and the Savage Orcs all advance towards the center of the battlefield, looking to get into the fight. Crogzic moves to meet them, taking up a position on the hill ready to fight next turn. The Black Orcs, meanwhile, advance behind the large rock of Kizhud Ridge, keeping an open firing lane for the Spear Chukka. It fires a spear at the Savage Orcs, and manages to skewer 3 of them in a single hit. Meanwhile, on the north side of the battle, the Goblins have engaged in an archery duel. Crogzic's Goblins manage to kill a Wolf Rider first, before they move closer and fire back, killing one in return on the second turn. Across the battlefield, the Savage Orcs are all quite optimistic, declaring charges which don't pan out, the Boar Boys failing to make distance due to having to wheel, while Batoc's boys simply thought they were closer than they were. Stinkam manages to get his goblins in order and moves forward before trying to cast Hand of Gork to push Batoc into the fight. He fails to cast the spell, leaving his boss hanging in the open, ready to be charged. Crogzic sees this and bellows at his boys to charge. One of them misunderstands the command and instead hits his neighbor, thinking they're fighting each other. This leads to a squabble that Crogzic desperately tries to get under control. The Black Orcs reposition a little bit, cunningly hiding behind the rock to spring out and catch the Savage Orcs when they walk past in the flank. Across the battlefield, the Goblin Archers and Spear Chukka both fire, but fail to connect with anything. One of the Boar Boys is upset that they declared a charge too soon. He decides it's his neighbor's fault and takes out his frustration on him, clubbing him over the head. This leads to a big brawl. The sight of them fighting, as well as Crogzic's boys fighting each other, inspires Batoc's boys to do the same, which in turn agitates the goblins enough to also begin brawling. With most of the army tied up fighting itself, the Savage Orcs move up to threaten Crogzic's flank when he charges, and the Wolf Riders move closer, firing at the goblins opposite them again. This time they manage to kill one, and send the unit fleeing 11 inches before they regain their nerve next turn. Down by the ridge, Crogzic declares a charge. This time, his boys all understand him, and they rush into the fight with Batoc's boys. The Black Orcs, meanwhile, declare a charge at the Savage Orcs. Unfortunately, their cunning ambush has now left them unable to easily get into position to fight, and they stumble forward awkwardly. This leaves the Savage Orcs exposed to another shot from the Spear Chukka, and another one goes down. At the same time, the Goblins in the north fire at the Wolf Riders, and kill 2 of them. As their lines crash into each other, Crogzic and Batoc come eye to eye. Both bellow challenges to each other, and the boys around them know it's serious. Crogzic swings at Batoc, and manages to land a deep cut across his chest, not enough to kill the hulking orc, but a step in the right direction. Batoc screams in fury, and pushes forward in a frenzy of bloodlust, butchering Crogzic despite the magical protection of his shield. Seeing his boys fail to do any damage alongside him, and with his foe destroyed, Batoc cunningly chooses to disengage from the superior ranks, numbers, and standard bearer of his enemy. He flees 6 inches, and the boys give chase for 3, eager to continue the fight. Batoc's planned retreat comes to an end, as his boys also want to keep fighting, and he's forced to turn about to face the Orc Boys behind him. Stinkam brings his goblins around to engage in the fight that's about to happen in the coming turn, while the Boar Boys continue arguing about whose fault it is they aren't in the fight yet, unable to see the irony that they would be in the fight already if not for the infighting. The Savage Orcs, meanwhile, give in to their primal rage and charge the Black Orcs. They manage to cut 2 of them down, before losing 2 of their own and fleeing in the face of the superior warriors. They run straight into the Orc Boys and disperse in a panic. This gives Batoc pause, but his nerve holds, and he and his boys stay in the fight. The boss of the Orc Boys, Olrod, picked up the Ironhide Shield of Crogzic, though he hasn't yet equipped it, unsure of how the magic item works. Seeing Batoc ahead, he knows that this is his chance. If he can cut down Batoc and return with Crogzic's shield, then he'll be the new boss. His boys charge and manage to cut down one of the savage orcs. Batoc kills 2 more, but it's not enough, and again his unit retreats. This time they're caught and cut down. Olrot takes his head and hoists it in the air as a trophy. Stinkam sees his boss fall to an enemy that now has their back to him. This is his chance to claim leadership of the tribe. If his goblins can stab them in the back and get them to flee, then they'll be the victors, and he can be in charge. He boldly explains this plan to his goblins before calling for a charge. A few of the goblins never much liked Stinkam, and so they refuse to move. This leads to another brawl as Stinkam tries to get them to cooperate. While this is going on, in the north, the spear goblins under Crogzic's command have gotten bored of holding the flank, and instead charge the wolf riders who have strayed too close to the line. They kill one, and send the wolf riders fleeing. They never rally and flee from the battlefield while the goblins give chase. This leaves the goblins exposed to the boar boys, who finally get focused enough to declare a charge. They slam into the goblins' flank and kill 7 of them, sending the rest fleeing to be trampled underhoof. In the next turn, they charge the untouched unit of goblin archers and manage to kill them all, before taking a spear to the flank from the spear Chukka, killing 2 of them. On the southern side of the battlefield, the Black Orcs have approached the fight, while Olrot's boys have reformed, ready to charge Stinkam's goblins next turn. Now that the opportune moment has passed, Stinkam finally convinces the goblins he's the best leader they have. They rush forward with determined vigor towards the nearest foe, who now happen to be the Black Orcs. With no other option, they charge into the Black Orcs. It's a massacre. The goblins fail to do any damage, while the Black Orc boss, Kizhud, cuts down Stinkam, and his men manage to cut down another 3 across the 2 turns. Though it's never enough to send the goblins fleeing, the game comes to an end as the goblins realize Stinkam is dead and they're not fighting for anything now. With the battle over, both Kizhud and Olrot declare that they should be in charge now. Olrot claims that he has Crogzic's shield and killed Batoc. Kizhud argues that he's bigger and he killed the shaman, so they're even. Plus, Olrot just stole the shield anyway, Kizhud should have it. The 2 bellow at each other and brawl, but neither gives in. Eventually, Olrot has a great idea. He suggests that they come back tomorrow for a definitive fight to determine who's boss. Kizhud can't believe his luck as he agrees. Of course he's not going to fight fair. He'll get some boys together and surprise Olrot with an ambush. That'll show him. Before we look at the tactics used, if you enjoyed this battle report, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Every bit helps the channel grow and ensure there are plenty more Warhammer battle reports to come. Tune in next week for the Battle of Blightwood, a 500-point Warbands game between Wood Elves and Skaven. This battle was an absolute mess. Animosity seemed to strike at the worst possible times and kept most units from taking advantage of opportunities presented to them. My traffic management and judgment of distances wasn't great either, which only made things worse. Outside of that, there wasn't much strategy to discuss. Orcs are simple creatures, and that shows in their tactics. With all that said, I had a blast playing this game out. I ended up taking on a more role-playing mindset in the middle, playing each unit based on not just what the winning move was, but also what the particular character in it might be thinking at the time. Where a lot of the battles see the narrative forming after the fact when I write the script, this one was actively developed throughout the battle, and it definitely made for a better experience playing. Sadly, I don't think it's something I'll do much more of in the future. It worked well today, as orcs are very easy to get into the mindset of, and animosity throws a wrench into things that naturally produces a story. Other factions require a bit more thinking and development of characters before the battle, though I suppose that might be fun in and of itself, so we'll see what happens.